again. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess for the evening for Women to Women, and we have a very special lady from the Philippines with us tonight, Alicia Eidel. But before we get to Alicia's story, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Carpa Nevada, LLC, importers of fine Portuguese olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and international teas, as well as Vila Basque, home of Pete's famous chorizo. And it's with pleasure that I welcome you, Alicia. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Alicia, I haven't known you for very long, but what I know of you is that you have come a long ways around the world into the shores of our country. You were born where?
Pampanga, the northern part of Luzon in the Philippines.
In the Philippines. Now, for our viewing audience, Luzon is one of the largest areas of the Philippines, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay. And you grew up in a family with an extended, I'm sure, brothers and sisters, cousins, first, second, third cousins, because that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is. And did you grow up in a family that had goals for you? Because as a teacher, my students who have come from the Middle East, or my students who have come from Southeast Asia, even from the Far East, most of the time there is a wonderful family unity about educating their children to the very best of their ability, and they take education seriously. Did your parents?
Yes, and that's all what my father and mother said, get an education. With education, you can do a lot more than what the past generations could have done.
Okay, so they keep building upon the accomplishments of one generation to the next.
Correct.
So, Alicia, did you grow up with a lot of brothers and sisters in the Philippines?
Yes, I had 3 brothers and 1 sister.
Okay, and were your parents educated?
Yes, my mother is a businesswoman, and my dad finished civil engineering at the age of 21 at the University of the Philippines.
At the age of 21, he became a civil engineer. And did that take your father outside of the Philippines? Did he travel a lot? Was he gone from the family?
Yes, my father was the city engineer in Manila.
The city engineer?
Yes, and then when the war started, World War II, the city was bombed. And Manila was flat to the ground.
By the American bombers?
By the Japanese.
The Japanese,
this was
okay.
World War II.
Right.
And so my father preferred not to work with the Japanese when they occupied the Philippines. And so my dad didn't have a job. That was his choice. But after the war, my dad, being the city engineer, was responsible for rebuilding Manila.
What a task.
Yes. Build bridges, buildings everywhere. And so through this, after many years, the United States invited my dad to come to Washington, D.C.
As a civil engineer?
As a civil engineer, as a government employee with the Philippine government.
So did the family come with your father?
No, just my dad. And so through that, say, Alicia, how would you like to go and come to the United States after the bachelor's degree? And so I said, I'm coming.
So you entered as a student, or you had finished your studies and you were coming over to obtain a green card?
No, I came to the United States as a foreign language, as a foreign student.
Okay.
With knowing that we have to speak English, and we spoke English. Everybody in the Philippines knew how to speak English. Every medium of instructions, every book we had and have is in the English language.
Now, besides English, what other languages did you speak in the Philippines? Because that was not your mother tongue.
That's right. We have our dialect. We have to learn our national language.
Which is?
Which is Tagalog. Tagalog is a mixture of Malayan and Polynesian and some Spanish languages, since we were under the Spaniards for 300 years.
Their influence is still there.
Yes.
Very much
yes.
so. So you entered the United States. Did you come and live in Washington, D.C.?
No, I did not.
Where did
As
you
a
go?
foreign student, I went to the state of Colorado because that was my dad's favorite state.
His favorite state.
Yes. And before you can do that, you have to have a student visa.
Yes.
And before you can have a student visa, you have to go through the embassy for multiple interviews.
Yes.
And you have to have a letter of acceptance from the university. You have to have letter of financial support so that when you come to the United States, you're not a burden to the state.
That's quite a process, isn't it?
Yes, and I even carried my x-ray.
Your chest
My
x-ray?
chest x-ray. I remember that. It's a big
It's a very big piece of document, yes.
Because you have to be healthy to come to the United States.
Now, as a young woman, unmarried, following in the footsteps, so to speak, of becoming a foreign national, when did you get your citizenship?
Well, I have to go back.
Okay.
After finishing my studies at the University of Colorado, I had to go home.
Back to the Philippines.
Back to the Philippines because those are one of the conditions. You come to the United States for further schooling, you bring what you've learned to your own country.
Yes.
So
yes.
I had to go back to my country, to the Philippines, and I worked there for 1 year. Mm-hmm. And then, I had to come back to the United States because it's the greatest country in the whole world.
Isn't it? I agree with you. I agree.
And
sometimes you have to leave it to recognize that.
Yes, yes. And so I was accepted at UCLA for a doctoral program in psychology.
Why psychology?
Because there was a time when my sister was saying, well, Alicia, you're now growing up. What do you want to be? And I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? And my sister said, well, you like working with people. How about psychology?
And that's not an easy course.
And that's not an easy course.
No, it's not.
And so there I was. I majored in psychology.
Now, here in the United States, it would seem an attractive lady like you would soon gain the attention of various gentlemen. Did you marry an American, or did you go back to the Philippines for a Filipino wedding?
No, when I came back to the United States, I was at UCLA,
Yes.
and that's where I met Jim, my present husband, my
And
only
only husband.
And after 9 months, we got married. And we were both at UCLA as graduate students for 4 years.
Okay. Now, in being married to Jim, I know that you have traveled to different parts of the world where you have actually taught. Is that correct? You have taught in the classroom.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Where, besides here in the United States, where did you take your talents of connecting with people? Where else have you taught?
Well, we went to Australia, but before Australia, but let me go back to your question.
Sure. Yes.
That I did not answer because when did I get a green card?
Yes, become a
Yes.
U.S. citizen.
Well, you get married and then you apply for a green card. And then it takes 5 years before you become a U.S. citizen, and you have to take a written test. You got to know about the government, the form of the government, the 3 branches of the government, know the Constitution. It was a big deal.
It is. My first husband
It was
had to
a
go
very
through
big
that.
deal.
Yes.
And then you raise your right hand
You're sworn in.
and you pledge your loyalty to the greatest world, to the greatest country in the whole world.
And it's a very emotional moment, isn't it?
It was a very emotional moment.
Because
Yes.
you've gone through the process of becoming a naturalized U.S. citizen.
Right,
And it just
right.
doesn't happen that easily or overnight.
That's right.
You are literally,
Yes.
your background is checked from the top of your head to the soles of your feet.
Right, right.
So in your life with Jim, then you've been to Australia.
Yeah. Okay, with my life with Jim, when we left UCLA,
Yes.
I work at UCLA
Okay.
with the dean's office. Then we moved to Tucson, and my husband was exploration geologist for Hana Mining Company. And partner with a BHP, which is part Australian company. And so we traveled to New Zealand.
To New Zealand?
New Zealand.
Because of Jim's work?
Because of Jim's work.
Mineralogy, really?
Yes.
Geology?
Yes, geology, looking for copper, mines, gold, you name it, oil. And although everybody there spoke English, they had a different accent again.
Yes. The Americans have a very different accent compared to the British, and the Australians have even another one.
Right, right. And there I volunteered with my 2 kids when they are in nursery school.
Yes.
As a teacher.
Good for you.
And from New Zealand, we went to New Guinea.
To New Guinea?
Papua New Guinea. It's another world.
How so?
Another world. Well, you know, Papua New Guinea, they were at the time under the Australian government. Mm-hmm. Port Moresby was the capital. As we came down from the airplane, you see these painted black people, and with bones on their ear, on their nose, and you kind of get scared, you know.
It was a cultural.
I'm very independent. I hang on to my children's arm. I said, or to my husband's arm. I said, Jim, wait a minute. Children, just stay with us. We had 3 children then, 3 little ones, you know.
Yes.
And so, anyway, then we ended up living in Lae, New Guinea. That's in the middle of Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
And it's amazing. The people that you think you're scared of, when you see them as ordinary people, they're just like you and I.
That's right.
When that paint is all washed and they took the bone out and they wear a T-shirt, you're just like fun of you.
Can you help our viewing audience understand what was the purpose of the bones in the nose or in the ears?
It's decorative. It's decorative, and they have this long, you know,
earlobes.
Their culture, when they're young, they make their earlobes long.
Yes.
So that some of the women's earlobes are that long.
And that's a mark of beauty in that culture.
And that's what they call beauty.
Yes.
You know, and the man prefers the women with longer ears.
Yes.
Really.
Yes. So from New Guinea, then where did you go?
Well, New Guinea, I taught school there.
Okay.
In a boys' school, you know, these big strapping black kids, and really there is no discipline. They love to study. They love to learn. They've never missed school, rain or shine. Sometimes it rains 6 days in a row. And the school building, there's constant hot. And the humidity is probably 95%, and you just sweat. You can feel the sweat. But you're focused. They are focused in learning.
They want
Everything
to learn.
is in the English language. They are under the British school system.
Yes.
They have to pass their examination in the 12th grade to be able to finish and get a diploma in high school.
Well, you know, Alicia, you are a teacher. You are a learner. You are an observer of people. And when we come back in the second part of our program, I want you to share with us where you have finally landed with all of this experience and what you're doing now. Thank you so much, Alicia. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Are you looking for a healthier lifestyle? A more nutritious diet? Do you care about quality? If your answer is yes, or if you are just curious, come into Villa Basque Deli and Cafe right here in Carson City, Nevada. Discover fine Portuguese extra virgin olive oils, vintage balsamic vinegars, and a wide assortment of international health teas provided by distributor Carpa Nevada LLC. In addition to these terrific items, Villa Basque is also the home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo, handmade on the premises from Pete's secret family recipe. Satisfy your culinary curiosities. Don't delay.
How was school today?
Cool, we learned what to do in case there's an emergency.
Oh, will you show me? Yeah, and if there is an earthquake, then you get under your desk, duck, cover, and hold. And when the shaking stops,
we evacuate the school just like a fire drill.
I'm glad you both know what to do in case of an emergency, but I'd still be worried.
you're supposed to check the phone, radio, or TV, and they'll tell you what to do.
Make a plan
Assemble a kit.
Stay informed.
and be ready.
Working together, we can protect your home.
Replace that old shingle roof with a fire-resistant alternative and keep it and your rain gutters clean.
Do the same to your deck and consider installing screening in open areas underneath.
Also, stack your firewood at least 30 feet from your home.
One ember can destroy your home. Take our advice and your home can survive.
Will your community survive?
Visit livingwithfire.info for more tips to save your home.
Welcome back. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess for this evening, and we have Alicia Eidel with us. And Alicia has been sharing that what a privilege it is to be a full nationalized American citizen. Alicia comes to us from the Philippines, and she has gone through that whole process, and it is a memorable one. It's an emotional one as well. And now she's taken us through the various countries of Australia, New Guinea, and the various cities that she has taught in. She's a bloomer. Wherever she is, she's a bloomer. And Alicia is one of the most highly educated, probably, of women that I've met. And I'm impressed with her desire of education for her children and of her family's desire for education for Alicia and her siblings. So, Alicia, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, Alicia, you've left us here. We're in Australia. No, we're in New Guinea. We're in New Guinea. And I keep wondering, are you coming back to the United States? Because you've been gone for a while, but not yet. From New Guinea, where do you go?
We went to Perth, which is Western Australia.
Okay.
By this time, my husband was in charge of all of this exploration.
Yes.
In that
as a
part
geologist,
of the world.
he's out in the fields all the time.
Yes. And so as soon as we checked in a hotel, I picked up the phone and dialed a number, which I look in the phone book, the Department of Education, Counseling and Guidance, or Psychology.
Yes.
And I got somebody after many dialing, and I asked if I can have an interview and have an appointment to see the superintendent. And yes, of course. And I was carrying all my papers, my
credentials
from UCLA, from all the places I've worked.
Yes.
And so after sitting down, like you and I, Dr. Baker interviewed me, and I told my husband, don't wait for me, please go away. I thought it was going to be 30 minutes. It went on for an hour and an hour and a half. And then I said, Dr. Baker, when do you think I should know whether I get the job or not? And he says, you got the job.
Oh, wow.
And I was surprised. And I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? And he said, no. I said, why me? And he said, because you're the most qualified. And he has a stack of applicants.
I'm sure.
And then when I had my own school, Cunningham High School. I will never forget that, 8th to 12th grade. And when I got to know the staff, I was the only one who was not a Caucasian. And so I thought, this is wonderful. And so the implication of this, if you work very hard and you've done a good job of what you have done before,
yes,
and you're qualified, then you get the job. It doesn't matter what color you are.
What color your skin is, that's right.
It's an American dream.
An American dream come true.
The American dream come true.
So bring us back to the States. How long were you gone, Alicia, from the United States?
From the United States, 7.5 years. 7.5 years, 4 years in Australia. And when I got my paycheck and I look at what I was putting in my pocket and the interest that I paid to the Australian government, and I said, oh my gosh.
The interest or the taxes?
Yes, well, I was paying Australian government because I was hired by the Australian
Government.
Government.
Okay.
And so I said, oh my goodness, I will never, never complain about taxes in the United States.
Because you were paying what percent?
40%.
40.
For a little money that I had. You know, compared to UCLA
Yes.
where I worked. And so we really shouldn't be complaining about taxes.
40% is a high,
It's very high.
standard,
It's
high
very
mark.
high.
So when go ahead, please.
Okay, so when we came back to the United States, I'll go back to your question. I applied for a job. I got a job.
You're very successful
We
at that.
moved to Missouri.
All right.
Missouri. West St. Louis, Missouri. So
Okay.
I got a job with the school. Again. And so I started working right away. And then I was in the classroom. And I said, oh my gosh, our kids can't read.
Can't read.
Cannot read. Our 7th graders cannot read. This was in 1976, 77. So that I felt, my gosh, we got to do something about this.
That was the bicentennial of our nation, the 200 years.
You know, because the
Something
number of
had
hours
happened.
are short.
So when you re-entered the United States and found employment again in the school systems, in this situation, Missouri, you saw some startling differences.
You bet. Yes.
And reading levels had come down.
Yes.
Okay.
And even then, even as way back, and I guess my standard was very high.
What
But
else did you
still,
see?
you
What
know,
else did you see that had changed?
Oh, another reason that I was really totally surprised, there was so much discipline that the teachers had to do before they start teaching their academic subject matter.
And you had been exposed to where there was no need for discipline because the hunger to learn was so great.
Exactly. In the
Yes.
Philippines, long hours. We start in the when you're age 5, after 10, you're finished. You're finished high school at the age of 15 in the Philippines. But then we stay in school the whole day. And in Australia, there is no discipline in the classroom.
There's no need for it.
There's no behavior problem.
Okay.
When
Wow.
I came to the United States, and I thought, oh my God, my heart is breaking for these kids and for the teachers. Shorter hours. The teachers spend so much time disciplining the children, sit down, before they can tackle their lesson plan. It wasn't just that. One day, it was so hot. They closed the school for 2 days because it was hot.
They
We
didn't have air
don't have any
conditioning.
air conditioner, and we can't
Yes.
expose our kids into this weather. Oh my gosh. And then when I think about in New Guinea, I began a high school in Papua New Guinea, you sweat, but you study and learn the whole day. It rains. And you stay and focus on your studies.
Yes.
And so I thought, what's happening with our school system?
Well, we have to, it's a complicated process, isn't it? As we gain acceptance into the world, as we gain a name into the world as a country, others are looking toward us to see what we're doing that's different, that's working. And we've had a wonderful 200-year plus history of our Constitution working with us and for us. And we've respected that. And now we're having some extremely challenging times all throughout our culture, our American culture. So, as a teacher like you, in the classroom, I know that there is still a regard, a respect for those who have really learned their craft, and they share it abundantly, and they share it fairly, and they share it with confidence with their students. And for students, that creates in them almost, a focus to become like that. How do you do that? How did you do it? How much time did it take to learn that? But when the answer comes back, it takes years to craft what you do, to become a professional. It doesn't happen in 2 weeks. It doesn't happen in 2 years. You're just getting your feet, so to speak, wet on the sod. Excuse me. So I, too, when I came back into the country, found changes. And I came back into the country at the same time as you, the late 1970s. All right, Alicia, seeing that, knowing that, You are still involved with children in the tutoring programs. You are still tutoring children at home or at school. What do you do?
Well,
you've never stopped teaching.
No.
In spite of all the difficulties.
Of course. Let me give a little bit of insight. When during the war, when all the books in English were burned by the occupation of the Japanese, we never stopped learning. You get a stick and you draw an A on this
on the sand.
Ground, A, B, C. You keep teaching everybody that's around you. And write your name and your numbers.
Yes.
1 times 1, you know.
Do your mathematics on the beach.
Do your mathematics, yes. And so it was just in my heart. And when I see these kids that they really need help.
Yes.
I started a tutoring program, actually.
Here in Carson City.
In Carson City. And there were 21 of us tutors, 3 elementary schools, Empire Elementary School,
yes,
Fritz Elementary School, Borderick Bray Elementary School.
Yes.
And Fritz at that time had a summer program wherein it's what they call a reading program. And they have 1 teacher that is paid. And they needed volunteers, and so here I am with all my friends. And then that budget was cut. So it stopped.
Staff was cut.
That's right. And so I said, well, we don't have to stop. Let's do a literacy program. And that's what the literacy program is every summer we have.
So what I'm hearing you say, Alicia, during some of life's worst moments, keep going. Don't give up. And just as occupied Philippines, occupied by the Japanese who burned up all of the books in English, you took the English to the beaches, you took the English to the sands, and you can work your literacy program right on the beaches if necessary. And that is true in so many nations that are under despotic rule, under communist rule, that I have seen friends of mine memorize a page of literature. They memorized the whole page. They kept that folded up in their pocket. Someone else memorized the next page. And as they shared 4, 5, and 6 pages in an enclosed, small, darkened room where no one could hear them, they heard the story of Albert Schweitzer. They heard the story of Thomas Edison. They heard the story of Charles de Gaulle. And that's how they continued to learn. So you are that light that really burns under that little bushel. Your light shines out wherever you have been. And that's such a lesson for all of us, Alicia, to have. Not to be discouraged, because we're going to have challenges that would like to thwart who we are as a person, who would like to stop progress as we know it. But it doesn't have to happen. One person, like an Alicia, can make a difference in children's lives and in other people's lives. So I thank you, Alicia, for sharing that story. It's inspiring. It's mind-boggling at times, okay? But you have left the country. You've come back in. You've seen changes, but you're not afraid to work with those changes. And you're not afraid to go through the process of time to become an American citizen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. And Alicia, I want to invite you to my favorite place here in Carson City for supper tonight with me, okay? Glen Eagles. I think we'll have a good time. And until I see the rest of you next week with a brand new guest, thank you so much for joining us. We thank our sponsors, Carpenter Nevada LLC and Vito Bass Stelling Cafe, home of Pete's famous chorizo. Until next week, have a good evening.